Life and business can feel chaotic when you're trying to do it all. That's where Andy Melton Coaching comes in. For nearly 2 decades, Dr. Andy Melton has helped high-achieving leaders find freedom in their time, relationships, finances, and purpose. His 90-minute strategic rhythm reset is more than a coaching session. It's a chance to redesign your week so you can get more done without burning out. You'll create a personalized rhythm blueprint that aligns your goals and priorities and walk away with a clear plan to focus your energy. Trade chaos for clarity and bring your dreams to life. To learn more and book your session, visit scalinguph2o.com/Andy Melton. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/ANDYMELTON. Don't wait. Schedule a strategic rhythm reset with Dr. Andy Melton today. Are your glycol systems protected and operating at their best? Thermal Fluid Technologies is here to ensure they are. Trusted by industry professionals for over 25 years, their protocol heat transfer fluids provide unmatched corrosion protection and system performance for industrial HVAC, process heating and cooling, and food and beverage applications. Need a clean start? Their cleaner and degreaser prepare your system for years of trouble-free service. And their state-of-the-art lab offers one of the most comprehensive coolant testing programs available. Upgrade your system's performance today with Thermal Fluid Technologies. To learn more about Thermal Fluid Technologies, go to scalinguph2o.com/TFT. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/TFT. Thermal Fluid Technologies, where performance meets peace of mind. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, the host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. Nation, today I'm thinking about boilers. I'm thinking about the first time my dad was training me in industrial water treatment, and I was never nervous around cooling towers or chillers. But I remember I was nervous the first time I started learning about boilers. Like I was actually doing something with a boiler and you could feel the heat, you could hear the noise, and you could see the pressure on the gauge. So I don't know if seeing the pressure or the heat or all of that stuff combined, I just remember feeling very apprehensive that I could do something incorrectly and then something catastrophic could happen around that boiler. And as I've talked to other people and as I've trained with the Association of Water Technologies, I've heard that people are more intimidated by boilers than they are on the cooling side. So that just seems to be a particular theme. Now, we've all seen that picture of a boiler blowing up and there's all this stuff. There's a particular handbook that's in. Well, Nation, if you look really close at that famous picture in that handbook, you will see that there's building materials in there. That's not a boiler explosion. That is a building demolition, and they happen to demo the boiler with the building. So I know we've all heard about a boiler catastrophic failure, but I don't think it happens as often as maybe that picture that is probably in all of our minds that we are thinking of. So maybe boilers aren't so bad. And of course, after a several year career, I'm hesitant to say how many years in water treatment, I've learned that boilers are something you definitely need to respect, but definitely not fear. Understand, but not fear. And the next time maybe you're a little apprehensive about something, maybe that's that turkey timer going off and popping up and saying that you need to learn more about that particular item. Because if you learn more about it, the mystique is taken away. And now we don't fear it, we understand it, hence we can respect it. And I'm trying to think, my dad was the one that taught me the most about industrial water treatment, but then I also learned a lot about boilers from an individual that originally was trained in the Navy. And when I was growing up in water treatment, that's where boiler knowledge experts came from. They started out in the Navy. They were probably responsible for the steam plant on a ship. And they came out, they went into water treatment, and they just kept learning. And in my case, somebody kept teaching. And I learned a tremendous amount of boiler knowledge from this individual. His name was Joe Resch, and he is no longer with us. But I remember I was spending the night at a boiler plant with him, and we were cleaning a boiler. There was an issue with another company. There was silicate scale there. And if you know how to clean silicate scale, that is no easy matter. That's no laughing matter. Some really serious acids are involved with that. Acids, if you're not careful with, can really ruin your day, if you know what I'm saying. So I was babysitting the boiler. I had just started working with my dad and the company that he was working with, which was called National Chemical, which is no longer around. And we were camped out outside of this boiler room. And every so many minutes, I had to go in, I had to run tests. We had to adjust pumps to make sure things were just right. Of course, we were wearing a tremendous amount of PPE because we were working with certain acids. And I remember sitting on a lawn chair outside of this boiler room, outside, a clear day, kind of a warm night, but a clear night. And we were just talking about boilers. And he was just teaching me the entire night. Now, that was one of my favorite water treatment nights. I know I'm not wired right, but we're all water treaters. We're all wired in the same way. I learned so much from Joe that night. And a lot of his stories came from his Navy experience. Now, these days, there's not a lot of steam that's on Navy ships. They have changed to different power. So we're not getting a lot of the same people out of the Navy that know about boilers. So we're having to look for different areas, for different ways to bring people within this industry. And it's my hope that that could be you when you are talking with people about what it is that you do. You share how exciting this is. You share how it makes you feel when you walk into a place, you don't know what's going on, there's an issue, you find the issue, you correct the issue, and you've now saved that customer however much money they would have spent in downtime. Now they have production time, and that was all because of you. Or they were getting bad results on something else, and that was costing them something else. And you figured that out, and now you are the hero. Folks, we've got to talk about stuff like this because we don't have as many people coming out of areas like the Navy going into water treatment and learning about what a great career this can be. So we all need to help each other, make sure the next generation knows what a great career this is and how amazing it can be to work in it. Well, somebody who knows how amazing this career is our friend James McDonald. And here is a brand new Words with Water.
Hello and welcome to Words of Water with James, the industrial water game show where I give you the definition and you get to guess the word or phrase being defined. Will you rise to the top or get blown down to try your luck another day? There's only one way to find out on Words of Water with James. Today's definition is water lost from a cooling tower as liquid droplets are entrained in the exhaust air. Can you guess the word or phrase? The answer is drift. Okay, for those who got it correct, step to the right. For those who got it wrong, please step to the left. I'm James McDonald, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Words of Water with James.
Well, thank you, James. And if you've ever wondered how James McDonald has just gotten so smart, well, one, he listens to this podcast, but two, he also goes to conferences to learn what it is that he does not know that he does not know. So maybe one of the conferences that I'm going to mention is going to do that for you. Maybe the AMP Annual Conference and Expo is one of those conferences. Now, AMP stands for the Associations for Materials Protection and Performance, and that's taking place March 15th through 19th in Houston, Texas. Now, we're going to have all the information that you're going to need to know if this is a conference that you want to attend, and all the information that you need to know in order to know how to attend it. Of course, to get that information, it's very simple. Go to scalinguph2o.com, go over to our events page, and we have not only that conference, but every conference that we know about. And while you're there, check out the Young Professionals Summit. Now, this is hosted by the Water Environment Federation and the American Waterworks Association, and it's all around young professionals, the next wave navigating water sector currents. So this is a great way for young professionals to get new connections, to get connections to help their career, to help their training, to help their ideas. So you're going to meet people there that can do all of those things and more. In addition to that, learn ways to help develop your interpersonal and leadership skills within the context of water and wastewater, and then broaden your understanding of the water sector through increased awareness through industry roles, challenges, and opportunities. Now, this is going to be March 22nd through 26th, and of course, we're going to have all the information you're going to need on scalinguph2o.com. Now, the final one that I will mention is taking place March 22nd through 26th in my hometown here in Atlanta, Georgia. It is the American Chemical Society Spring Conference, and that is taking place right here, like I said, in Atlanta, Georgia. Maybe you will see me there. Their motto is collaborate, innovate, and transform, and it is all about breaking through science, career-boosting events, and a community that shapes the future of all chemistry. We, of course, have all of that information on scalinguph2o.com on our events page. And of course, as I always say, while you're there, look at all of the events that we have available to you so you can continue to raise your own bar in what you know and who you know in the industrial water treatment industry. Well, Nation, speaking of who you know in the industrial water treatment industry, I can't wait to introduce you to my next guest. My lab partner today is Eric Johnson, founder and CEO of Boilearn. Eric, welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be on this podcast.
We are glad to have you. And I've got to ask, we have problems finding people in the water treatment industry. We have some people that are retiring. Of course, we need to replace them. I can only imagine in boiler technicians, that's got to be tenfold.
Absolutely. I would say boilers is a niche of a niche. You'll have like HVAC, the overarching industry, and there are HVAC technicians that do work on boilers. But I have really focused in my background is really diving into in-depth on boilers and learning commercial industrial boilers and very, very in-depth of the combustion and the controls, which you can really not do part-time. And it's a very specialized industry. And with a lot of specialization comes the need for a lot of recruitment. And the biggest recruitment tool was the Navy and their steamships. And a lot of ships up till through the 90s were steam powered. And then they did a lot of changeover to nuclear and other technologies. And they stopped a boiler technician job. And that has left a large gap in the industry as the Navy. If you go talk to a lot of operators and older people in the boiler industry, tons of them are Navy guys, a lot of Vietnam veterans who are retiring, and to fill that gap is going to be a huge hole. And I'm trying to figure that out. Tons of companies are trying to figure that out, but having the ability to talk about an industry in a way that's more, hey, come to work and it's a job. There's a career behind boilers. There's a career behind water treatment, and not enough people talk about it. And getting in front of young people is so important.
Eric, do you mind telling the Scaling Up Nation a bit about yourself and how you got into this industry?
Absolutely. So went to college for HVAC engineering technology. I learned everything about HVAC, fixing rooftop units, chillers, boilers, a very general overview, and then how to size everything. And then after college, I got into being a technician. I wanted to work with tools. So I worked for a boiler service company, did commercial industrial boilers as a service technician. And that can be, I wanted to find commercial industrial. So that could be like an office building and where people, are just in offices and that's just the heating. And then industrial could be chemical plants, water treatment plants, and, manufacturing where tires are made, cardboard is made, and boilers are all throughout manufacturing, especially in food manufacturing. And I kind of got thrown off the cliff doing that, but I learned a lot. And if you're in the industry, everybody knows there's a huge need for people that are experienced and trained and motivated. And I figured I'm not getting any younger. So this would have been 2 years ago. So 29. I'm 31 right now, but there's so many successful people who have started companies when they're in their 20s and they just stuck with it 10, 20 years or whatever. And I feel like there's this sentiment that in the industry, you have to be 50 plus years old before you know anything. And I reject that. While I understand I don't know everything, you have to start and you have to figure it out. And I looked at what other companies were doing. And while there are great companies providing training and opportunities in the industry, we need to do 1,000% more. And I wanted to be a part of the solution instead of just talking about and complaining about problems. So I went back and forth for like 2 years. And finally, I one day jumped off the deep end. I left my job, started Boilearn. That is Boilearn. That's Boiler and Learn combined. It's a made up word. So if you search it on Google, I dominate the front page because it's made up. But just have the mission and to drive continuous learning improvement in the boiler industry. So I come from a service technician background, and being a service technician, you have to really understand how to solve problems and be a solutions provider. And you can't just, sit around in meetings and talk about the problems and, oh, we're going to do this. Oh, we're going to do this. If you are a service technician and showing up to a site, people are looking at you of all different job titles and whatnot. Like I've had, you show up as a service technician when you're 25, and you have 20 people in a room staring at you like, all right, when's the boiler system going to be started up? And, it can be very intimidating. But I went full time, started Boilearn, and we are now just over 2 years into it and provide training and competency services for people that are in the boiler industry. So that can be contractors. We focused a lot on contractors. That's my background, but I've also helped in-house programs. So if manufacturing facilities will have in-house maintenance teams and operators. And while they work with boilers, their tasks are a little bit different, but I can still help them as the core fundamentals are all the same. But it's really building systems, and that's what the difference is between, maybe a 2-day class of some other company. And while those help, it's not a long-term solution, especially when you have to build up people from zero. So, they just came out of tech school, maybe they know a little HVAC and water treatment, but how do you get them to the point where they can work alone, where they're the expert in the boiler room? And a couple 2-day classes or 3-day classes throughout a year is not going to be the difference in that. And on the job training is more of a shotgun approach, and you can learn some bad habits as well as some good habits. But a lot of people get stuck in an on the job training gray area where they are not learning the fundamentals and they just get a bunch of random knowledge, and it's up to them to put it together. And your most driven individuals will put it together, but most people are not super, super driven and passionate. Like, it's a job to them and they may like it, but they also want to have family time, and, they want to shut off their mind after, the end of the day. And as an employer or a company, you have to structure training and knowledge for them. And instead of every single company doing that by themselves and trying to figure that out on top of all their customers' problems, I can help them do that. And I can speak the same language as them. I've been there. I've had those hard days in the boiler room, and being able to build those systems and training and competency for people is so important in order to help them learn.
Eric, let me ask, what was your experience when you graduated school and then you started as a boiler technician? How were you taught? What was that road like?
So I was mostly taught with on-the-job training. So I worked for a boiler service company, that represents a couple boiler manufacturers. So they all had manufacturers training, but at the end of the day, that's 2 to 3 day training. That's product specific. I would say most of my training, like where I really made up the ground, was I worked with a lot of older guys who had been in the industry 30, 40 years, had, seen and done everything, and working with them and just being a sponge and soaking up the knowledge from them is probably where I learned the most. And then I figured out, after you do that for about 2 years, I start figuring out and thinking like, man, how am I going to learn all this? It seems like these guys know all this knowledge. Like, where is this written down? Is it all just tribal knowledge? And then I started cracking open books and kind of started piecing together the knowledge and reading like, oh, like, this isn't just something they're telling me. Like, this is actually something that's documented in a book. Then you go into another book, and then you start finding like systems and processes in books, and you're like, oh, like this actually does make sense. This is not just a big pile of knowledge that I have to digest and translate myself. But I'll tell you, and if you talk to any technician, having that lifeline of being in a boiler room and maybe knowing what's going on, but man, to make that phone call to that experienced person there is nothing better than that. And they can teach you so much as long as you approach it in a positive way. The problem is that experience is leaving the industry, and younger people don't have that phone call. They don't have that lifeline as often to those experienced people. And that's where companies are struggling to build up younger talent, because the older talent is not there to shape and mold them like it has been in the past.
And that's why you started your company. I'm also curious about that journey. You were working as a boiler tech, you see the need. How did you make the leap and what did you actually create?
So I made the leap from just probably figuring out and sitting down and looking at what the industry is doing, what other industries are doing. I'm a big proponent of trying to learn what other industries are doing, what's working, maybe in like general construction. But even beyond that, and to take resources from what people are doing and integrating that into skilled trades, the boiler industry, water treatment. And I figured out and kind of looked at the 2 to 3 day class model. And while that's great, there's so much money and time that's lost to unproductive means as far as travel. You're losing people for 2 to 3 days. You're paying for hotels and whatnot. And that could be up to 50% of the class. And with the internet and communication, how it is, it's like, all right, do we really need to be training and learning fact-based knowledge from going in person? I know everybody says on the job training and in-person training, I'm a hands-on person. I only learn hands-on. I am probably the most hands-on learner there is, but at a certain point in time, you need to be able to learn and sit down in a structured classroom setting, I would say. But that classroom setting doesn't have to be physical chairs and desk. It can be a webinar, it can be a YouTube video. And that's the path I headed was, hey, how do I record videos and content and training and have live training sessions where people are learning through their computer, but they are learning the fundamentals of boilers and applications, steam, hydronics, and now they can start applying those fundamentals in-person training or on the job training. Whereas in reverse, where like if you're only learning on the job or if you're doing hands-on training and you're not really going to focus on those fundamentals, like how do you learn the Pythagorean theorem? You draw it out on a whiteboard. Well, you don't have to fly across the country to draw it out on a whiteboard. You can do it on your computer screen. Same thing with boiler fundamentals. How do you learn what high pressure steam and low pressure steam is? You can do that on your computer screen, but then you fly out. I've flown out to like companies to do training like in person, but when you get there in person, they've already learned the fundamentals. You touch on them, but you can hit the ground running and learn the application of those fundamentals and teach them how to apply it to their job so that you're not starting at day zero and just talking facts and PowerPoints to them. You are talking real world stuff that actually pays the bills, fixes problems, makes their customers happy, keep production lines running. And that's what my business is built around. While I'll probably have an in-person training facility eventually, I think online training done correctly is a huge tool that a lot of companies underutilize. And I will say there are a lot of companies who don't do it correctly. And if that's your experience, don't give up. Just don't use those resources. Like if your online training is just blocks of text on slides and computer narrated voice, that's not training. That's information presentation. So it's so important. Just like in-person training, not everything is the same. Online training, not everything is the same. And there's tons of different flavors of online training, but it's easily scalable. It is lower cost so that what you are paying for can go directly to the person instead of wasting a ton of money on travel and travel time and expenses that don't actually help your people. Then you take that training, you take all that knowledge, and then you apply it in person, face to face, and start connecting the dots and get the applications down. And that's where people really make up and actually learn and get ahead.
Let's talk about troubleshooting skills because I know all the things that I've learned in water treatment to troubleshoot are because of either issues I've created or I've been, I guess, forced to experience. So if I'm not on site when that's not happening, I'm not going to get that experience. How is your company shortening that gap?
So troubleshooting it all boils down to, it can be a huge mystery when you walk into a boiler room, there's pipes everywhere, there's a lot of noises, and it can be a huge mystery to problems that you can't see. But it all boils down to the fundamentals. Do you know the fundamentals of how does a boiler work, how steam systems work, how hydronics work? And then a step up from that is, do you know the sequence operations? And I always went back to, you're a service technician and you're walking into a facility for the first time. And the people who work at that facility for 10 years, they can't even correctly describe to you what's happening, but they know what's supposed to be happening or what shouldn't be happening. So I always operated from what is moving that shouldn't be moving, or what is not moving that should be moving. And that can get you pretty far. And, you talk to operators and whatnot, and having them say, hey, when I push this red button, this thing doesn't start. Well, like that's a good way to start isolating down the problem. You have to be able to isolate the problem, and knowing your sequence operation, that goes back to learning the fundamentals, is isolating the problem. When if the boiler isn't even starting and does nothing when you turn on the burner switch, using your sequence operation, you're going to automatically remove 90% of the problems of what it could be, and know, hey, I'm going to drill down into these issues, because these issues I know are the only things that are going to prevent a boiler from actually starting that is not showing any alarms. And if you don't understand sequence operations of the equipment you're working on, you will just be poking around and guessing and probably throwing parts at problems. There is always a solution to a problem, but another thing I teach is, the theory and then the check of it. It's kind of like the scientific method. And hey, I have this theory of what it could be. Let me check and test. Is it this? And you go one at a time. And is it this? Yes, no. Okay, it wasn't that. And then you go down the list. And a lot of people have problems compartmentalizing problems, and they start taking in all this data, and they can't break it down into steps of, hey, let me check this, and all right, this isn't that. And then they move on from that. A lot of people, especially younger people who don't have a good understanding of fundamentals, can check, like, say a motor. They check a motor. Hey, the motor's not moving. Well, the motor must be bad. And even though that they measure that there's no voltage going to the motor, they say, well, they don't understand how to check a motor. So, hey, there's no voltage going to the motor, but they're not 100% sure, like, and it seems crazy, like, yeah, there's no voltage going to the motor. Well, obviously the motor's not bad, but I've seen motors changed out, and you put a new motor in and it doesn't fix the problem. And that just comes from, really, and people make it more complicated than it is because it seems so easy. Go back to the fundamentals and problem solving, and having the ability to learn the sequence operations. And then with boilers and with pretty much all mechanical equipment these days, having a good solid base of electrical troubleshooting. If you don't know electrical and you have an electrical meter and you're just poking around and you don't know what number should be showing up on your meter when you put your lead somewhere, you're going to be guessing and you're going to feel lost. You may not always have a sequence of operations for a piece of equipment. While you may have a general idea of it, you pull out that electrical diagram and that's your sequence operations. And you track the voltage through your ladder diagram, and you go through everything and say, hey, if I have voltage here, this should be happening. All right, I don't have voltage here. I go backwards now. And you move up or you move down, away from the power source, depending on how you go about it. And that is your sequence operation. That's how you systemize and actually find the problem, instead of guessing and, oh, I think I should have voltage here. Well, I don't have voltage here. Well, yeah, that's because 10 steps back doesn't have voltage. So you're not going to have any voltage downstream. But for me, it's not about learning exact product specific knowledge. While that's helpful, you'll eventually get that. But you have to have that foundation of knowledge and learn the fundamentals and learn sequence operations, and learn that electrical troubleshooting, how pressure works, how temperature flows and everything. And that will get you so far and beyond people that even have 15, 20 years experience. If they don't have that core knowledge of fundamentals, I've had tests where you send people tests and their lead technician gets, 40, 50% on this core fundamentals test. At 15, 20 years experience, they should know this stuff. But just because somebody can fix problems or has been around the longest doesn't mean that they understand the core fundamentals. But for new people, core fundamentals, foundational knowledge, and then build up from there. If not, you're building on a foundation that's shaky, and you'll easily get frustrated and they'll get frustrated.
All right, Scaling Up Nation, it's time for a word from one of our sponsors. If there's one thing we know as water treaters, it's that success comes from building strong partnerships. And that's exactly what North Metal and Chemical Company is all about. My friends at North Metal are committed to creating long-term relationships built on trust, reliability, and innovation. Their industry-specific expertise means they understand your challenges and work tirelessly to provide great Northwest products along with a personal touch. With dedicated technical support, North Metal and Chemical Company stands out as a partner who truly cares about your success in the industrial water treatment space. Head over to scalinguph2o.com/north and start building a partnership you can count on. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/north. North Metal and Chemical Company, serving the water treatment industry since 1921. Scaling Up Nation, we have some of the most amazing sponsors. Now, back to the interview. So let's do a public service because you are in the boiler technician camp. I'm in the water treatment technician camp. And I will say, I have had some amazing relationships with boiler technicians. They will call me when they see something, or maybe they even see bad water treatment. They say, hey, you need to talk to this customer. So I know how great the relationship can be. But I hear more often than not that it's a bad relationship, but there's just no relationship at all. How can we repair that? Because there's so much from each side where we can help each other.
Absolutely. So, especially on the steam side of things, the water treatment person is critical to the life of a boiler. If you don't have good water treatment, that boiler and system are doomed from day one. And having your service company or your internal maintenance people, if you're a company with operators and whatnot, having them in tune with water treatment is so important. And sometimes you can have a water treatment person coming in weekly or monthly or quarterly. It depends on their schedule and what you're paying for. But the more they come in, the less you'll have to do, but you are responsible for filling in the gaps. And if they are only coming in on a monthly basis, you are only getting a snapshot when they come in, and something could be wrong 20 days of the month, and they're only getting a snapshot. And they could be, if they come in monthly, they're 30 days late to a problem. So if you're a service technician going to a customer and you notice, hey, like we opened up the steam boiler and we noticed scale and all this stuff, it's taking pictures. And like if the water treatment person isn't there, take pictures and like kind of investigate, this is going on, and then communicate that to your customer as well as, if possible, the water treatment person, because those pictures and telling them what is going on goes so far for the water treatment person, because a lot of times, maybe they can't make it to see the boiler internally, or, the customer changed the schedule. And if nobody tells them what's going on, all they have are their tests. And every good water treatment person wants to see the inside of the system eventually, because tests, they only go so far. You could have great tests, but if you don't ever look inside the pipes or look at your corrosion coupons or whatever, there's really no positive feedback. But as a service company, as a service technician, it's that positive feedback, but then it's also packaging it and understanding that your customer is not the water treatment expert, is not the boiler expert, and they're more of just a middleman. And maybe you can email information directly to the water treatment person, but packaging it, let's just say in your service report for your water treatment rep, these are the things we noticed, and even making like a paragraph directly for the water treatment person. So it's not a, hey, you're talking to your customer and then the customer is trying to relate to the water treatment person. A lot of stuff will get lost in that relay, especially if the customer is not technical. When I was doing service, one of the best sites I had, going back to, having a relationship with your water treatment person, the water treatment person would show up weekly. I would show up weekly, but we were never really showing up at the same time. But he would call me, hey, I'm noticing that this chemicals fitting is leaking, going to be shutting down the DA, on a Saturday. What are you seeing here? Then I would also text him stuff. And we had a relationship of going back and forth. And while I don't have any interest in the water treatment and he doesn't have any interest in the boilers, like on a financial wise, us communicating benefited the customer. And the customer wasn't in between our communication. And a couple text here or there or a picture here and there goes so far. And now he shows up to the next water treatment visit and has a chemical fitting for a chemical pump instead of showing up and then finding that that fitting's bad and then having to come back another week and that pump is maybe off or offline, or a chemical drum was leaking or something. He shows up prepared with knowledge. And then when we were opening up the boilers, having pictures of the inside of the DA to show him, he would try to show up, but it wouldn't always work out. But it's that communication, and I packaged it directly for the water treatment person. And you two collaborating helps your customer. And while your customer may not realize it, there's so much value to the service side and operation side and water treatment side collaborating. If you're just two people passing in the middle of the night, it's so easy to say, hey, the boilers are scaled up. And then your water treatment person saying, hey, the softener's not working. And your customer, while it may seem like the customer is going to know, they don't know. Just because the softener's not working doesn't mean the customer is going to connect that to, hey, there's scale in the boiler. But now you have pictures of scale in the boiler. The water treatment person says, hey, your softener's not working. This is the fix. And it's not just a service company saying, hey, your water softener's not working. You need to buy this $10,000 water softener. It's now two companies saying, hey, like, this is your problem. This is what's going to happen. This is what's currently happening. And that collaboration goes so far, especially even if the water treatment company is a part of a mechanical contractor and whatnot. I found that a lot of times that larger company, that mechanical contractor service company, has absorbed a water treatment company, and they may have different reports. And not always will the water treatment person know the service person, even if they're working in the same company. And that would be internal systems and communication. But if you're on the service side and you start noticing things, you got to package it in your report for the water treatment person as well as the customer. And then on the water treatment side, hey, like, heads up, we had issues with the water softener for 2 months now, and I know you're going to open up the boilers. Like, let me know how bad it is, and then maybe I'll adjust the water treatment to try to get some scale out of the boiler and dissolve it and whatnot. And that going back and forth is so valuable, and hopefully your customer will eventually realize how valuable it is. They may not know until they don't have it, and then they have a very expensive repair, and two sides are pointing at each other, and nobody talks.
And unfortunately, that happens way too often. Like I said, I've had some great relationships with boiler technicians. I will say that I will go out on a limb and say most every water treater wants to be there at that boiler inspection. I want to see inside of every piece of equipment that I'm treating. The problem is that a lot of times we don't even know that it's being opened up. Or we get a phone call saying, hey, the boiler is open. Can you get here? Well, no, I'm all the way across town with a full appointment book. So, is there anything that we can do to better communicate on that?
I would say that goes back to the customer. While your service company may talk to your water treatment, it's the customer communicating with both sides and the service company saying, hey, we're going to be showing up on this time. And a lot of times when you're opening a boiler, especially on a steam boiler, you'll also have a third-party inspector, whether that's from the state or insurance company. So it all gets pre-scheduled before, and the customer may not even know that the water treatment person needs to show up because the service company is scheduling and their insurance company is scheduling, hey, we're going to have the boiler open. And the customer doesn't know that, hey, this guy that shows up monthly also needs to make an extra visit this month to show and like look in the boiler if they can and if their schedule allows. And if you're on the service side, it would be mentioning, hey, like we have this all scheduled. This is when our people will be on site. Make sure you notify your water treatment company that this is the date that it's scheduled. And a lot of times, you'll be a couple months out at least, or, even the customers will have a very exact date that the boiler gets opened annually, and your water treatment person should be knowledgeable to that and what that date is and be able to schedule and plan around that date. It doesn't always happen all the time. Sometimes they get busy. Sometimes that date moves a couple days and they can't be there, and that's where the service company can pick up the slack, take pictures, communicate with the water treatment company. But if you're on the service side or operations side, it is reminding your customer, your end user, your owner, hey, we're opening this up. Yes, we will be there. The insurance company, state inspector will be there. Also, make sure you communicate with your water treatment person. If you don't have that open communication, if you do have that, maybe you can call up the water treatment rep and say, hey, this customer, this site, we're going to be there that day. Do you have that on your calendar? Oh, yeah, I got that. I'll be there. All right, I'll see you then. And that 1-minute phone conversation saves so much headache. And I've also found, the service companies can notify the customer, and customers, they get busy. Your emails get lost, phone numbers, get lost and whatnot. And hey, did you notify? Did you notify? Did you notify? And then the water treatment rep doesn't show up. And then you ask them later, oh, they said it was this date, or they never even told me. And I asked, and there's no such thing as over communication. And, there's 3 parties involved in that time, and every party communicating with each other. It's always beneficial. Obviously, stuff gets through the gaps, but if you're an outside contractor, informing your customer and not assuming that they know the procedure just because they've done the procedure, especially if it's a newer manager and hasn't seen this procedure done last year, and having checklists or even a PDF. Hey, this is what you should expect. This is what you should have done. I mean, even, I've with a steam boiler shutdown, steam boiler running at 100 psi is, whatever, 300 degrees. I'm not sure on the temperature off the top of my head, but I've had customers, hey, you're supposed to be there at 7 a.m. to, open up the boiler. You get there in the morning and they say, hey, I came in early at 5 a.m. to shut down the boiler for you to give it some time to cool down.
It doesn't work that
Well,
way.
2 hours on an industrial boiler, the boiler's still 280 degrees with 80 pounds of pressure on it. And that just goes back to communication of, hey, we're going to be opening up the boiler. We need at least 24 hours to cool down. We don't want to drain it hot. And, this is when it needs to be shut down for this date. Same thing with water treatment. Hey, boiler's going to be open. We're going to be there. State inspector's going to be there. Your water treatment rep should be there.
Well, even more to that, if we know that you're going to be opening the boilers, we're probably going to make an adjustment to the program prior to you opening it up just to make sure the startup goes easier.
Yep, a lot of fresh water. You'll get a cold DA if you have a DA, and all that oxygen and everything can throw off your chemical for a week or two, depending on how much makeup you have. And yeah, making that adjustment and being there, or making an extra visit inside of a month or a week to make sure everything is going as correctly and you get back to that normal operating status as quick as possible, so that you're not having unnecessary corrosion of your metal.
So we have a saying in industrial water treatment, when in doubt, blame the water treater. Does the boiler technician side have a similar saying?
I don't know about a saying, but I would say it's when in doubt, it's the boiler's problem. So when I say like I train people on boilers and whatnot, I think of boiler, I automatically assume the entire system. Some people say I work on steam systems. I'm not really sure what the best way to communicate that is, but when I say I work on boilers, I work on the boiler and the steam traps and all the piping. It's all interconnected, just like a car is. There's tons of components, and one component affects other components. And I've been on so many jobs where you will have a problem, and just because it's part of a steam system or a hydronic system, well, it's the boiler's fault. You need to get the boiler person in here. And then I would show up and, oh well, it's not the boiler's fault, it's this fault. And but it's so easy for all, especially on new construction, all the other contractors say, hey, the heating system isn't working, well, where's the boiler guy? And it's always, where's the boiler guy? And you go, well, no, this isn't, this is a pump and flow issue with your balancer. This is not a boiler problem. The boilers are reacting to your problem, but they can't overcome the problem themselves. This is a system problem. And no matter what you tell them, it's so easy for all the contractors just, oh, it's the boiler guy. It's the boiler guy. Get the boiler guy here. We need the boiler guy. I mean, I was on a job where 3 brand new boilers wouldn't fire. And they're like, man, they're going down on low gas pressure. Like, your boilers are screwed up. We think your low gas pressure switches are bad. I'm like, all right, these boilers are 1 month old, not even. I highly doubt we have 3 bad low gas pressure switches. Like, do you have good gas pressure? Yeah, the plumbers checked that. Yeah, that's not the issue. We have great gas pressure. Like, you need to get here. So I get there. I show up on site. These are brand new boilers, very reliable. So then I'm like, all right, you fire the boiler, the gas pressure goes to 0. Boilers trip on low gas pressure. So then I asked the plumber. I'm like, all right, where's your regulator? All right, what's it set at? Okay, pop that union off the vent on the regulator. So you pop the union off, low gas pressure issues go away. So then the plumber goes up to the roof of the building, and during the installation and construction process, they had left a cap on the vent for the regulator. And if the regulator can't vent and breathe and adjust the diaphragm pressure, the diaphragm pressure on top of the regulator is now trapped and it won't be able to perform, and you'll get gas pressure issues. They took the cap off, all the issues went away. But it was, get the boiler guy there, and it was an emergency. We don't have heat, all this stuff. And I was like, the boilers are not the problem. It's a gas pressure problem. Oh, we have gas pressure. Well, it's static gas pressure. And they never looked the extra step. It's get the boiler guy, get the boiler guy. Well, the boilers are reacting to a regulator problem with natural gas. Just because the problem shows up in the boilers doesn't mean it is the boilers. And I'm sure, I mean, water treatment, you have that, you have corrosion and whatnot. And, well, we need more chemical. We need this, we need that. Well, it's actually this that I've been writing down on my service reports for the last 8 months that you did nothing with. And now it's getting worse.
If our listeners want to find out more about Boilearn, what should they do?
Number one, get on LinkedIn. Follow me, connect with me, DM me. I love connecting with people. I think LinkedIn is a great tool. That's my plug for LinkedIn. That's the most where I'm active. There's so many people on LinkedIn that drop so much knowledge and value and pictures. I've learned so much. I've probably been active on LinkedIn, like active, probably 2 years now, and have a profile picture, show up, do something, interact with people. But that's where you learn. That's where you can reach me. But other than that, you can go to the Boilearn website. Everything's on there. There's courses, a couple courses there. If you want customized training, there's a form you can fill out. You can easily contact me. But LinkedIn is, I think, the number one tool for people to learn, especially in the water treatment, boiler HVAC industry. Getting connected with your peers, even if you're so happy with your job. LinkedIn is not it. We have moved away from finding a new job, and while it can be that, it is getting your network. And this is how we got connected. This is how I learned about this podcast. But if you're a water treatment person, you may not have a super specialized person to call in your company, but hey, through your LinkedIn network, you've met this guy posts, you may be able to DM him. And there's so many people that can get on the phone even if it's your direct competitor. And hey, this is what I'm seeing. Oh yeah, I've seen that before. You should do this, make this adjustment, and do that. And I've had that conversation so many times through LinkedIn. Like, just don't underestimate the value of LinkedIn. Get on there. I'm on there, and connect with people. But the network and learning from other people is so valuable.
Yeah, you put out some great content on LinkedIn. We'll be sure to put how people can find you on LinkedIn on our show notes page, and any other information we have that will be there for people to easily find. Eric Johnson, Boilearn, I want to thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great time. I always love talking about water treatment and boilers.
Well, Eric, thanks again. And I just get so excited when I talk water treatment and entrepreneurship. Those are just two of my favorite things. And Eric deciding, hey, I'm going to take what I learned in HVAC school and I'm going to create the courses that I wish I had, that I know there's a void out there in this space. And Eric, you're doing a great job. If you're not connected with Eric on LinkedIn, he's got some great posts. He does some fun things. And Eric really learned a lot from our interview, but then also you and I talking before and after the interview. Nation, that's something that I probably need to bring to the Scaling Up Nation, but the guests and I will talk before, so we have some common context, and then we normally talk afterwards after we're making sure all of our files look correct. And I don't record those, and I just get so much great information out of that. So I don't know, maybe we'll figure out how to do a behind the scenes at some point in time. But anyway, all of that is to put together the show that you have grown to love. And it's my hope that you love boilers. It's my hope that you're thinking about learning more about boilers. And something else that I'm hoping that you already have is a relationship with your boiler technician. I have to say that there are so many boiler technicians out there that have called me and asked me questions about things that they've seen inside the boiler that doesn't look right. And they want to know, is this a water treatment issue? What's going on with that? And the great thing is when it's not my customer, I now get to go and look at a site that's not my customer and talk about how we solve something that's not my customer. I think you see where I'm going with this. So the next time you're at a boiler inspection, the next time you see somebody pulling a boiler apart, have a conversation with them. You are part of that team. And in fact, if you roll up to an account and somebody is taking wrenches to a boiler, you have already missed your opportunity. I thoroughly believe that when a boiler shuts down, there are certain things that you should do chemically before the boiler shuts down to make sure, one, it looks as good as it can, and it starts back up as good as it can. And if you're just meeting that person when they are turning wrenches, getting ready for the boiler inspection, you have missed that opportunity. The other person that I hope you know very well is your boiler inspector. And so many people are intimidated by boiler inspections, or they don't even know that the boiler inspection is going on, and then they get a report. Scaling Up Nation, if there is something that I can underscore, please make sure you know all of the dates when the equipment that you are treating is being opened up. Now, I know what you're saying, Trace, they don't tell us that the equipment is being opened up. And I know that. And I have definitely tried to be there, and nobody told me when there was. And I showed up and they said, we had a boiler inspection last week, and here is the report. And I read the report, and I so badly wish that I could see what they were talking about myself. so I could then diagnose it myself. And a lot of times, the diagnosis that was written in the report was incorrect. Now, I can't prove that because I'm not there to work with the people that were there. So, how do we make that happen? Well, talk about it for one. If you're never talking about the boiler inspection, it becomes an afterthought. And you're not going to be invited to that party if that's the case, or you're going to get a phone call saying, hey, we just opened this boiler up. The inspector's leaving. Would you like to see it too? We're getting ready to button it back up in about an hour. You got to love those phone calls. And then, of course, you got to figure out how you're going to rearrange your day. So if you start talking to your customers about equipment inspections well before when that equipment is being inspected, it starts planting that seed in their head. And hopefully they schedule it. A lot of times they forget to schedule it, and then the insurance company calls and they have to schedule it, or maybe it's even scheduled for them. Well, they are allowed to schedule those things if they're proactively thinking about that. And if you are talking about that during regular service visits, it's going to prompt them to be more proactive so you can be more proactive. So it's my hope the next time you talk to your customer about the equipment that you are treating, that you work in a conversation about when is this going to be opened up, so we can all have a look, because I know what's happening with the water. I know pretty much what's happening on the inside of the equipment, but really taking a look is the proof in the pudding, and it really gives me so much more information as your water treater. So let's figure out when that appointment is going to be. Nation, I sure hope that you learned something from this podcast, that you start doing something from this podcast. And that is the goal. Each and every day, what is one thing new that you can do that makes you better at what it is that you do? And with that, I'm going to say we'll see you next week. Take care, folks. Are you ready to take your water treatment career to the next level? Get the confidence you need to sign up for the Certified Water Technologist exam today by taking our Certified Water Technologist prep course. Learn valuable tools and techniques to help you succeed. Plus, test your knowledge with our 100-question practice exam. Visit scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep and put yourself on the fast track to certification. Don't wait, start today.